The laugh is what I still hear when the house is too quiet, not the kind people do when they're surprised, but the sharp, bright bark of someone enjoying a joke at your expense. 1 second I was on one knee in the middle of the restaurant patio with the string lights above us, and a crowd gathered close enough that I could smell someone's cologne and the lemon from a cocktail, and the next second, she had her hand over her mouth like she couldn't believe what she was seeing. I remember thinking she was overwhelmed, that she'd cry, that she'd say yes, and we'd laugh later about how I almost dropped the ring. Instead, she leaned back in her chair, looked at her friends, and said loud enough for the whole patio to hear, "So delusional. Imagine thinking I'd actually marry him." Her friends erupted, not even trying to hide it, and someone at the table beside us gasped like they'd just witnessed a car crash. My face went hot, then cold, and I couldn't make my fingers work to close the ring box because my hands were shaking so badly. She didn't even stand up to help me. She didn't whisper. She didn't soften it. She let it land and watched it land, like she'd been waiting for that moment. When I finally got to my feet, she tilted her chin at me with that little smirk she saved for people she thought were beneath her and said, "You really did this in public? That's embarrassing." Someone behind me said, "Man, I'm sorry," and I wanted to disappear into the concrete. I could feel phones out, could feel the weight of eyes, could hear the low murmur starting to spread like a wave. My mouth was open, but nothing came out except this pathetic breath, and the only thing I managed to say was her name, like maybe if I said it right she'd remember she loved me. She rolled her eyes and reached for her drink like we were in the middle of some boring story and she couldn't wait for it to end. And then, because humiliation apparently wasn't enough, she took her phone, aimed it at me and said, "Hold that pose, this is going to be hilarious." That's when something inside me snapped. Not loud, not dramatic, just a clean break, and I closed the ring box with a click that felt like a door shutting. I walked away while my legs were still obeying me, past strangers who wouldn't meet my eyes, past the hostess who looked torn between sympathy and discomfort, past the valet stand where my hands fumbled for my keys like I'd never held them before. I got into my car and sat there with my forehead against the steering wheel, breathing in short, shallow pulls like my chest had forgotten how to expand, and I watched through the windshield as she stayed seated, laughing, not even checking if I'd made it out alive. By the time I drove home, my phone was already buzzing. Texts from people I didn't expect to be watching, notifications from social apps I rarely used, and one message from her that finally came through like a final shove. "Don't be dramatic. You set yourself up. I didn't start out as the guy who would propose in public. I didn't start out naive or desperate or trying to perform love for a crowd. I was the guy who paid attention, who made lists, who tried to do things thoughtfully. When I met Madison, she wasn't the person who laughed at someone on their knees. She was the girl in a hoodie at a coffee shop in Raleigh, tapping her pen against a notebook, looking up when I asked if the seat across from her was taken. She had this quick smile and a way of making you feel like she was choosing you out of a room full of options. I was working long hours in IT, saving for a house, trying to be the steady one in my family because my dad had been sick for years and my mom carried that quiet exhaustion that never really left her eyes. Madison had big plans, big energy, big talk about building an empire, and at first it was intoxicating. She said she wanted stability, loyalty, a man who could handle her. I thought it was flirting. I didn't realize it was a warning. Early on there were little tests. She'd show up late and watch my reaction. She'd cancel plans last minute because her friends wanted to go out, and then get cold if I sounded disappointed. She'd make comments about my clothes or my car like she was helping me upgrade. "I'm just trying to elevate you," she'd say, laughing like it was cute. The first time I met her mother, Trisha, I understood where it came from. Trisha hugged Madison like she was royalty, then looked at me up and down and said, "So you're the one. Not nice to meet you, not welcome, just that." At dinner she asked what I made, what neighborhood I lived in, what my credit score was. Actually asked it like it was normal, then smiled when Madison answered for me, like Madison was the one interviewing. Madison's younger brother, Kyle, barely looked up from his phone. Her family dynamic was like a stage. Trisha directed, Madison performed, and everyone else fell in line. I came from a family where you didn't talk over people, where you helped clean up without being asked, where you didn't weaponize love. With them, affection was a reward you earned by doing what you were told. Over time, Madison learned what mattered to me and used it. She noticed I hated conflict in public, so she'd pick at me at dinner with friends, making little jokes at my expense, and then squeezing my thigh under the table if I started to bristle, like she was controlling a dog with a leash. She noticed I was proud of being dependable, so she'd create situations where I had to save things, rent due, car payment short, phone bill late, then praise me afterward in that sugary tone that made me feel like I'd done something meaningful. She learned I loved the idea of a family because my own felt fragile, so she'd talk about our future kids right after we fought, like she could toss me a dream bone and I'd come running back. But there were patterns I ignored because I wanted to believe the best version of her was the real one. When she decided she wanted to go back to school, she cried about how she'd wasted time and how she needed support, and I told her I'd help. That help turned into me covering more and more: groceries, utilities, her portion of rent when her hours got cut, the one-time expense of a laptop that somehow became a monthly subscription list of things she needed to succeed. If I hesitated, she'd get quiet in a way that made the air feel heavy, then she'd say, "I just thought you believed in me." If I asked for a budget, she'd say I was being controlling. If I asked why she needed a new phone when her old one worked, she'd say I was embarrassed of her and wanted her to look cheap. It was always flipped, always turned back on me, until I was apologizing for questioning my own money. The favoritism in her world wasn't about children, it was about who served her best at the moment. Her friends, especially Ashley and Tori, treated relationships like status symbols. They called me husband material in a voice that sounded like they were talking about a used car, reliable, boring, something you settle for when you're tired of having fun. Madison would laugh along, then later tell me I was too sensitive if it bothered me. Still, there were nights she'd crawl into bed, curl into my chest, and whisper about forever, and I'd convince myself that was the truth, and the rest was just noise. By the time I bought the ring, I had already swallowed more of myself than I realized. It wasn't impulsive. I'd been planning. I'd saved quietly, cutting back on my own stuff, working extra contracts on weekends, telling myself it was for our down payment, our future. Madison loved grand gestures online, the kind that looked good on a feed, and I told myself that was just her personality, that it didn't mean she was shallow. She kept dropping hints about proposal season, about how my friend's fiancé did it at this rooftop place, about how she didn't want anything lame. She'd show me videos where the guy had fireworks or a whole band and she'd say, "See? Effort." When I suggested something private, just us, maybe at the lake where we'd spend our first weekend trip, she wrinkled her nose. "That's not special," she said. "That's like camp counselor vibes." It sounds ridiculous now, but at the time I felt like I had to prove something. Her mom had started calling me the boyfriend, with this emphasis that made it sound temporary. Trisha would invite Madison to family events and tell me afterward that it was just immediate family, even though Kyle's girlfriend was always there. Madison would shrug and say, "You know how she is," then never defend me. Then came the night at a friend's birthday party when someone asked when we were getting married and Madison laughed and said, "He's not there yet?" I was standing right beside her. People chuckled. I forced a smile. Later in the car I asked what that meant, and she said, "Don't make it weird. I just meant you're not ready." When I told her I was ready, she looked at me like she didn't believe me, like it was cute that I thought my readiness mattered. That should have been the moment I stopped. Instead I doubled down, because that's what people like me do when we feel insecure. We try harder, we spend more, we perform better, hoping love will solidify if we can just get it right. The restaurant patio wasn't even my idea. It was hers, indirectly. She pointed it out weeks before, said it was the vibe, said she'd seen influencers there. I made a reservation, asked the manager if we could do something small, paid extra for a table near the lights. I invited her closest friends because she made it clear she wanted witnesses. The night of, she was already irritated because it was chilly and she didn't bring a jacket. She blamed me. In the car, she scrolled her phone and barely spoke, then asked if I'd at least hired a photographer. I told her I asked a staff member to take pictures. She sighed like I told her we were eating at a gas station. Still, I went through with it, because I had the ring in my pocket and the weight of every sacrifice weekend and every swallowed argument behind it. When I knelt, she didn't look touched. She looked stunned, not because she was happy, but because she couldn't believe I would claim that moment. Her laugh cut through the air, And it wasn't just rejection, it was a public stripping of dignity. The worst part wasn't even the crowd. The worst part was realizing she wasn't surprised by the proposal at all. She was surprised that I thought the answer might be yes. After I left, she didn't call. She didn't check in. She posted. Someone tagged me in a clip before I even got home. Me on one knee, her laughing, the words clear as day. Comments rolled in, some sympathetic, some cruel, some making jokes about shooting your shot. Ashley reposted it with a caption about men with audacity. Madison liked that caption. When I finally opened my front door, my house didn't feel like mine anymore. It felt like the place where I'd stored a version of myself she no longer needed. I sat at my kitchen table, ring box in front of me like evidence, and I realized I didn't just get rejected. I got used, mocked, and then packaged for entertainment. The next morning, she came home like nothing happened. No apology, no shame. She walked in with sunglasses on, kicked her shoes off, and said, "We need to talk about last night," like I was the one who caused a scene. I asked her why she did it, why she said that, why she filmed me, and she took off her sunglasses slowly and said, "Because you put me on the spot. You tried to trap me." I actually laughed then, this stunned, broken sound, because the word trap coming from someone who'd been pushing for a big proposal was insane. She said she was protecting herself, and that I was obsessed with being the good guy. When I told her she humiliated me, she shrugged and said, "You'll live." Then she sat on the couch and started scrolling, like my pain was background noise. I asked if she loved me, and she said, "That's not the point." When I asked what the point was, she finally looked up and said, "I'm not marrying someone who can't keep up. You think a ring fixes everything? It doesn't." That's when I started seeing the past year like a film rewinding. The way she always wanted upgrades. The way she expected me to cover the difference. The way she'd talk about our future like it was a contract, and I was behind on payments. I asked her if she'd been planning to leave, and she said, "I've been considering my options," which is a phrase you use for jobs, not love. Then she dropped the part that made my stomach turn. "Also, I told my mom you were thinking about proposing, and she said if you did it in public I should shut it down, so you don't get any ideas. You needed a reality check." Her mother, the same woman who iced me out, who treated Madison like a prize and me like a placeholder, had coached my humiliation. Madison said it like it was normal, like it was a reasonable family strategy. And I realized Trisha wasn't just a background influence, she was a co-author. I tried to keep it calm, because that's how I've always been, but calm doesn't work when the other person enjoys your restraint. Madison started telling people I freaked out afterward. She texted mutual friends that I was unstable. She told her coworkers that I proposed to manipulate her. My own sister called me, furious, because someone had sent her the video and asked if I was okay. My dad's nurse even mentioned it, awkwardly, like it was some viral celebrity thing, and I felt my soul leave my body. The humiliation seeped into places it didn't belong. At work I caught someone watching the clip on their phone in the break room. They looked up and quickly put it away, but the damage was done. Madison acted like I deserved it. When I asked her to take the video down, she said she couldn't control what people shared. Then she added casually, "Plus, it's kind of iconic." That word, iconic, like my lowest moment was content. I started checking my finances because something in me was screaming to look, and that's when I found the first real betrayal. She'd been using my credit card for months for things she never mentioned. Not groceries, not school supplies, bottles at clubs, ride shares at 2 a.m., boutique charges, hotel holds. When I confronted her, she said, "You told me to use it if I needed to." I told her I meant emergencies, and she laughed and said, "My mental health is an emergency." Then she turned it on me again. "If you're going to throw money in my face, we're done." The thing is, we were already done, but she wanted to be the one to declare it. She wanted control of the narrative, control of the exit. It got worse fast. 2 days after the proposal disaster, she told me she was going to stay with her mom for space. Then she packed like she was being evacuated. She took gifts I'd given her and also things that weren't hers, my Nintendo Switch, a watch my mom gave me, a set of tools from my garage. I stopped her and asked what she was doing, and she said, "Consider it compensation for wasting my time." She actually said that, with a straight face, like the years we spent together were a service I failed to deliver. I tried to stop her from taking my stuff, and she started yelling loud enough that my neighbors could hear, screaming that I was scaring her. I stepped back immediately, because the last thing I needed was an accusation, and she smirked when she saw me retreat, like she knew exactly what button she'd pushed. After she left, my phone rang and it was Trisha, who I had never spoken to privately in my life. She said, "I'm going to give you advice you should have asked for earlier. Leave my daughter alone. She deserves better." I asked her if coaching Madison to humiliate me felt like better, and she said, "You embarrassed yourself. Men like you always do. Men like me. Not my name. Not a person. A category." I hung up shaking. That night I got an email from my bank about a new account inquiry, and my stomach dropped. Madison had tried to apply for a personal loan using my information. Not successfully, because thankfully the bank flagged it, but she tried. When I called her, she didn't deny it. She said, "You owe me. You promised a future. You promised stability." I told her trying to take a loan in my name was fraud, and she said, "Then don't make me the villain." That was the moment I realized she wasn't just cruel, she was dangerous in the quiet, practical way that ruins lives. The emotional climax didn't happen in a dramatic screaming match with a crowd watching. It happened in a small, fluorescent-lit office when I finally got the truth laid out in front of me like paperwork. I went to my apartment complex management first because something told me to document everything, and the manager, a tired woman named Denise, pulled up footage from the security cameras because Madison had claimed she left peacefully and I wanted proof of what she took. We watched Madison loading my tools into her trunk, taking my watch box, taking the switch. Denise printed stills for me without me even asking, her mouth tight with sympathy. Then I went to my bank, and while I was sitting in the lobby waiting for a fraud specialist, my phone buzzed with a message request from someone I didn't know. It was a guy named Ryan. His profile picture was him in a polo in front of a lake, normal, harmless looking. His message said, "Hey man, I'm not trying to start drama. I think we need to talk about Madison." My hands went numb. I responded, and within minutes he sent screenshots. Madison texting him late at night, Madison sending selfies from a hotel bathroom, Madison calling him babe, Madison saying she was basically single. The timestamps went back months. Months of me paying bills and working weekends and telling myself love was patience, while she was building a second life. Ryan said he didn't know she lived with someone until that viral proposal clip hit his feed, and he recognized her laugh. He said he felt sick when he realized the guy on his knee was me. Then he sent the final screenshot that cracked something open in my chest. A text from Madison to Ryan the night before my proposal, saying, "If he does it, I'm going to shut it down. Trisha wants it public, so he learns." She planned it. She premeditated my humiliation like it was a lesson. And then, as if that wasn't enough, Ryan sent a voice memo she'd recorded for him where she laughed and said, "He's a great starter boyfriend, though. Paid for everything. I'm almost done with what I need." I listened to it sitting in that bank lobby with strangers around me, my face frozen, tears burning behind my eyes because I wouldn't let them fall in front of anyone, and in that moment my grief turned into something steadier, clarity. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't overreacting. I'd been played. I thanked Ryan, not because he was a hero. He wasn't. He'd been part of the mess, but because he gave me the missing piece that made the whole picture undeniable. When Madison called later, probably to demand money or to accuse me of spreading rumors, I didn't argue. I told her I had the messages, the footage, the loan attempt records, and that if she contacted me again it would be through an attorney. She went silent for half a second, then her voice sharpened into panic wrapped in arrogance. "You wouldn't." And I said, calmly, "Watch me." Consequences didn't feel satisfying at first. They felt like paperwork and stress, and a constant buzzing in my nervous system. I filed a police report for the stolen items, not because I wanted revenge, but because I needed a record in case she tried to twist the story again. I froze my credit, put fraud alerts on everything, changed every password I could think of, and removed her from any accounts she had access to. I sent her a single, written demand for the return of my property with itemized lists and dates and printed screenshots, because if there's one thing I learned, it's that emotional people get dismissed and documented people get heard. Madison tried to call my bluff. She had Trisha leave a voicemail saying I was harassing her daughter. She had Ashley message me that I was pathetic. I didn't reply to any of it. I forwarded everything to a lawyer I found through a coworker, a no-nonsense woman named Sandra who read the screenshots with a flat expression and said, "This is straightforward." Hearing someone say that, straightforward, was like oxygen. Sandra drafted a formal letter. Madison suddenly stopped laughing online. Suddenly the post slowed. Suddenly I got a message from Madison, not apologizing, but bargaining. "We can handle this privately." I said no. She returned some things half-heartedly, claiming she couldn't find others. The police report and the security stills did their job. I took her to small claims for the items, and the unauthorized charges that I could prove weren't shared expenses, and the judge didn't care about her tears or her dramatic story about being pressured. The judge cared about receipts, timestamps, and bank statements. Madison was ordered to pay restitution for a portion of it. Not everything, not some movie-level windfall, but enough that it felt like reality finally acknowledged what happened. More important than the money was the boundary. I was no longer negotiating my dignity. I blocked her on everything. I told mutual friends that I wasn't interested in updates or gossip, and that anyone who wanted to stay in my life needed to respect that. Some people drifted away because they loved the drama more than they loved me. That hurt, but it also cleared space. I went to therapy because I couldn't sleep without hearing that laugh. I had nightmares where I was on one knee and everyone was filming. My therapist didn't tell me to move on. She helped me name what it was: betrayal trauma, humiliation, erosion of self-trust. Naming it didn't fix it overnight, but it gave me a map. I also had to face my own role, not blame, but recognition. I ignored red flags because I wanted a story where love wins. I overgave because I thought love was proven through sacrifice. I confused endurance with devotion. That ended with Madison, permanently. The closure didn't come with Madison sobbing on my doorstep, or a grand apology, or her admitting she was wrong in some satisfying speech. It came in quieter moments that didn't feel like anything at first, and then one day I realized I could breathe again. A few months after the court date, I went back to that same restaurant patio, not to reclaim it dramatically, not to stage some revenge scene, just because my sister wanted to prove to me that places don't belong to pain forever. We sat at a different table. The string lights were still there, the same warm glow, the same clink of glasses, and for the first time I didn't feel like everyone was watching me. I felt like a person again. I didn't tell the server why I looked tense when they walked past that corner where I'd knelt. I just ate, listened to my sister talk about her kids, and let normal life touch me. The video eventually stopped circulating because the internet always moves on to the next spectacle, and that's its own kind of cruelty and relief. Madison tried once more to reach out through an email address I didn't recognize. It was a few lines. "I hope you're well. I've grown a lot. I hate how things ended. It didn't include 'I'm sorry.' It didn't include accountability. It was just another attempt to rewrite herself as the thoughtful one. I deleted it, not because I was raging, but because I didn't need her voice in my life anymore, not even as an echo. The ring sat in my dresser for a long time. I couldn't bring myself to sell it, like touching it would bring the whole memory back to life. When I finally took it to a jeweler in Durham, the man behind the counter was gentle, didn't ask questions, just weighed it and wrote a number down. I used the money to pay down the last chunk of the credit card balance Madison had run up, and I remember thinking, at least something circular came back to a straight line. I stopped measuring my worth by whether someone like Madison wanted me. I started measuring it by how I treated myself when no one was clapping, when no one was watching. I rebuilt routines. Gym in the mornings, dinner with my parents on Sundays, a budget that felt like safety instead of restriction. I learned that love isn't supposed to feel like you're constantly proving you deserve it. It's supposed to feel like a place you can stand without bracing for the next shove. The last time I heard her laugh was in my head, fading, softer than before, because it was finally being replaced by other sounds. My dad telling a corny joke, my niece yelling my name when I walked in the door, the quiet click of my own front lock turning at night, the sound of a life that belonged to me. And if you're wondering whether I ever got married after that, the honest answer is I stopped chasing the finish line and started protecting the person who would have to live in the marriage, me. The justice wasn't that Madison suffered publicly the way I did, The justice was that she lost access to the version of me that would have kept paying, forgiving, and shrinking, and I gained access to myself again, which turned out to be the only ending that actually mattered.